all talk about having,
Arsenic?
no, not
Laetrile?
cyanide.
Cyanide, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah,
And
they
one
do.
says that it doesn't break down, and so it isn't a problem. The other says it does break down.
Well, I don't know about you, but I don't want to experiment with cyanide. I'll pass on that. Okay? Especially living in Tacoma. We have a lot of heavy metal contamination here already. We don't need any more. So I wouldn't eat those seeds or nuts or the pit at all.
I've been eating them, and I'm here today.
Well, if you start turning blue, we'll know why.
Okay.
That's why cyanide is called cyanide, because when you become poisoned by it, your skin turns blue, and that means you're cyanotic. So if you start turning blue, you'll know why. Okay? Okay? Any questions about plant foods?
One on that, you said kind bar. How was that spelled?
K-I-N-D.
Okay.
Are you kind or are you mean?
Yeah, now where would one find that?
I buy those at Fred Meyer, but you can buy them anywhere. Any grocery store has them.
Okay. In the
Usually
candy
like
department?
in the health food section.
Health food, okay.
Yeah. Yes.
What about coconut oil?
Coconut oil, okay. What's my take on that?
Your take on it?
Well, I'm old enough to have seen this trend come around 3 times. Okay, so this is the 3rd time. And the 3rd time is not a charm. Okay. Coconut oil is a saturated fat, just like steak or butter or eggs, okay? It is true that it has a little bit different properties than some of those other saturated fats that might make it a little bit better for us. But I want you to keep in mind that the people who used coconut oil as their source of fat in their diet lived in the middle of the Pacific Ocean. And there weren't many cows, and there were no Pizza Huts, and there were no McDonald's. So the fat they were getting in their diet was only coming from coconut oil. They would use it to fry their fish or to cook things, and it kept without getting rancid in a hot climate, so it was perfect for them. And it's so interesting you ask this, because I work with a Samoan nurse who's in her 40s, and she remembers when margarine came to Samoa, okay? And that happened in the 70s, and all the women ran to the grocery store to buy margarine, and they were so excited because it wouldn't go bad in the heat. They could keep it around for a long time. And she said it was then that they started to have all kinds of disease problems that they never had before. So my solution to this whole dilemma about coconut oil, if you're a vegan, if you're not eating any saturated fat, if you're not eating any animal protein, then go ahead and add coconut oil to your diet. If you're an American and you eat steaks and hamburgers and bacon and eggs and cheese pizza with extra cheese and pepperoni, then you better not be adding coconut oil to your diet, because you're adding more saturated fat to a diet that is already loaded with saturated
I
fat.
actually use it in place of butter.
Well, that's okay, but you still need to look at the context of the rest of your diet.
My diet doesn't include meat.
Well, then you're fine, probably. But you're not a typical American at all then.
No.
What I see happening is the trend comes along and everyone embraces it and people start selling products and buying this product and they're adding it to an already bad diet, and their diet just went from bad to badder. Okay, so you have to look at that for yourself. But I'm glad you asked that question, because there's a lot of stuff about coconut oil right now. Yes.
What about the various cooking oils, like sunflower, canola, and all these
Okay,
others?
so I didn't bring it tonight, but I can send it to Jack if he wants to distribute it to you, a thing about fats, healthy fats versus bad fats. And the bottom line is there are 2 types of fat that are good for us and that protect us from cancer and don't promote the growth of cancers. So I think about fat is like a molecular messenger. So when you eat fat, you consume it, it's absorbed into your bloodstream, and then whatever kind of fat you are eating, it sends a message to every cell in your body. So if you're eating lots of steak, lots of saturated fat, if you're eating lots of margarine and other trans fats, if you're eating a lot of omega-6 fats like safflower oil, sunflower oil, corn oil, and soybean oil, the message that's going to all of your cells is pro-inflammatory. Those are inflammatory fats. They promote the growth of cancers. They promote angiogenesis. Do you remember what angiogenesis is? What is it?
Blood vessels.
The building of blood vessels. So when you're eating a lot of that fat, you're promoting the building of blood vessels. That fuels the production of blood vessels. It helps the construction. Okay, so we want to limit our intake of those fats. The healthiest fats are the omega-9s and the monounsaturated fats. So you want to have an omega-3s. So omega-3s are found in cold water, wild fish, fatty fish, and nuts and seeds. But we don't absorb omega-3 fats from plants very well. So if you don't eat any fish, it's harder for you to get enough omega-3 in your diet. That's just a fact. And then the other fats we want to have in our diet are monounsaturated fats. Olive oil, canola oil, peanut oil, walnut oil, avocado oil. We do not ever want to bake or cook with corn oil, safflower oil, or soybean oil. And in America, the average person is eating 30 to 40 times more of the unhealthy fat than they are the healthy fat. So the healthy fats protect our cells from harm and from inflammation and from angiogenesis. The poor fats promote all those things. And it turns out it's just like going to war. And whatever army has the most troops will win the war. So if you're eating 30 to 40 times more of the unhealthy fats every day, that's what wins the war metabolically. If you're eating a more balanced approach where you have omega-3s and monounsaturated fats, then that helps to win the war there. So it's a metabolic war, and whoever has the most troops will win. So you want to think about the fat that you have in your diet, the quality, the quantity, and the relationship of one kind to another. Yes?
How dangerous is high fructose corn syrup?
Pretty dangerous. There's a local physician here, Dr. Michael Lyons. He's a gastroenterologist, and he's written a couple books about fructose. And one thing we know is, first of all, it wasn't introduced into the food supply till the 1970s. It didn't exist in the food supply until then. So that's a huge change in all of our diets in a short period of time from a biological perspective. And it's contributed to the dramatic increase in the amount of sugars that we're eating. When I told you before that the average American is eating about 140 to 145 pounds of sugar a year, 40 to 45 pounds of that is high fructose corn syrup. So just taking that out of your diet makes a big difference. But we believe that high fructose corn syrup changes the metabolism, the way your liver metabolizes sugars and fats. And it looks like it causes you to lay down more belly fat more easily. And so we're concerned about it. Dr. Lyons believes that it's contributing to liver failure. And I went to a conference on pediatric nutrition, and I heard a researcher there say that we're seeing babies in the United States, and I asked our maternity people at St. Joe's, and they said it's true. We're seeing babies born with fatty liver disease because their mother is consuming so much sugar and so much high fructose corn syrup. So they're born already with basically a deadly condition because of the diet of their mothers. So we're seeing huge, huge changes based on the way we're eating and living in the United States. It's really quite surprising that all of us aren't sicker a lot younger than we are. And we know now that those of us in this room, we will live a longer lifespan than our children and grandchildren because the quality of their diet and lifestyle as children is much worse than ours was as children. Most of us came from a time, I know I did, my mother cooked dinner every night. We always had a vegetable. We always had a well-balanced meal. We didn't snack between meals. We didn't have dessert except on a special occasion. My parents controlled our access to food and the quality of the food that we had. They were gatekeepers of that, mostly because of economics. But now people don't gatekeep at all. They let their children eat whatever they want, whenever they want, whatever quantity they want, and we're paying a price for that. Yes?
I've read where, and this is probably true, that some 40% of American children do not eat vegetables.
Oh, I'm sure that's true. That happened in my own family. I have a kind of a shirt-tail relative, and she had 2 little boys. And they went over to their grandfather's house one night for dinner. He was babysitting them, and he made chicken and potatoes and peas, and they were 5 and 7. And he put their plate in front of them, and they both said, "What are those?" Never seen a pea or had one. I can tell you, when I go to the checkout stand at the grocery store, I buy all kinds of produce, and usually the checkers don't know what it is. Like, what is this? I go, well, that would be kohlrabi. They don't know, because they're not eating it. So they don't have a clue. Okay? Yes?
You mentioned peanut butter.
Yes. I
Now,
did.
what, are there particular concoctions of peanut butter that are good or bad?
You probably want to stay away from peanut butters that have a lot of other ingredients other than peanuts.
So basically the,
Adams. The other thing is some stores, I don't know if Marlene's does it, but Fred Meyer's does. At Fred Meyer's, they have a bin with cashews and almonds and peanuts, and you just make your own nut butter right there. You just you put a container under the machine, and it grinds it, and you have it fresh. So any nut butter is a beautiful, healthy choice. Nut butter on a whole grain bread or whole grain toast is a beautiful, healthy meal or snack. Yes?
Is peanut butter a legume then?
In this country, we consider it a nut, but it is technically a legume. So I don't care where you put it,
It's good.
they're good for you. Yeah. Yes?
There's a toxic preservative in processed peanut, and the shell one that's much better for you.
The shelled ones?
Yeah.
Yeah. I don't know if you're referring to aflatoxin. Aflatoxin is a naturally occurring fungus that in many parts of the world, nuts and grains are contaminated because it's humid and they're stored in humid conditions. But in this country, we don't have aflatoxin contamination of peanuts, but we have other chemicals added to the processed products. Yeah. So it's a good idea to have raw, or even unshelled if they're unprocessed and just raw. Any other questions about that?
I did want to say one more thing.
Okay.
that people should be aware of, and that is potato chips also have some sort of toxic.
Acrylamide. Acrylamide is a chemical that is produced when food is cooked at a high temperature. So when it's fried or baked or roasted at a very high temperature, and acrylamide is a carcinogen.
Is
Absolutely.
corn good for you?
Corn?
Yeah.
Not particularly. The only thing good about corn is it's high in lutein, which is a plant chemical that protects our eyesight. And it's found in any yellow vegetable. But other than that, it's really not all that beneficial. My mother-in-law's from France, and when she came to the United States as a young bride, her mother-in-law served her roast beef and mashed potatoes and corn on the cob. And she thought that her mother-in-law was delivering an insult, because in France, only the livestock eat corn. So she thought her mother-in-law was making a statement about her, because they don't eat it. That's for animals, not for people.
Yeah, I think the livestock eats a different kind of corn.
They do,
It's all maize.
they do. There's field corn and there's sweet
Right.
corn.
Yeah.
But in other words, in those cultures, that's not something that people historically have eaten. Okay? And the last thing I want to talk about, and I'll answer any questions you have, is losing weight is really, really important if you're overweight. You don't have to lose a lot of weight, but even losing 5 to 10% of your body weight if you're overweight is important because it shuts off the tap for tumor growth. And so I have a handout for you on the danger of belly fat, and someone always says to me, "Oh, did you take my picture?" But what we know to be true is that the bigger your waist measurement gets, the higher your risk of cancer. And I'm part of a cancer prevention study with the American Cancer Society, and they don't take your blood or anything, they measure your waist. That's what they're looking at. Because the waist measurement is predictive of your cancer risk. So the more weight you pack on around your midsection, the more dangerous it is. And what happens is, as you pack on more weight around your belly, these belly fat cells, they're not minding their own business. They're very busy. They're factories. And these fat cells start producing inflammatory hormones, inflammatory types of testosterone and estrogen. And those inflammatory hormones are released into the circulation, and they're affecting all of our cells 365 days a year, 24 hours a day. So as we shut down that pathway, as we lose belly fat and we lose some weight, we also shut down saturating our cells with those inflammatory hormones. So that's really, really important. And for men, the more overweight a man is, the higher his risk of prostate cancer, and the heaviest men have the highest risk of recurrence and aggressive forms of cancer. And heavy men need a higher dose of hormone therapy to act on the prostate cancer because there's so much competition internally already. We also know there's a type of protein that's produced by belly fat called C-reactive protein, and we can measure that on the day of a diagnosis with breast cancer or prostate cancer, and that is an inflammatory protein that is produced by belly fat, and it's a measure of how aggressive a tumor can behave. So when you lose belly fat, you reduce the amount of C-reactive protein that's being produced, and it is circulating in your bloodstream. And C-reactive protein is an independent risk factor for heart disease and stroke as well. So when you cut down your belly fat, when you start to lose weight, when you get a little more active and you start eating more plants, you're actually you're making a U-turn in terms of providing cancers with fuel. You want to cut off the fuel supply to tumors. And after you're a survivor, that's vitally important. Because even though we can't look at an individual yet and say, oh, you got cancer because of this or that. We can't do that yet. We're getting closer because we're learning more about the tumor genetics. We're learning more about your genetics and your predisposition. We're learning that for you, this plus this equaled that. But we're not there yet. And because we're not there yet, we make general recommendations about the population and what we recommend you do after the diagnosis. So definitely in cancer survivorship, plant-based diet, not very many processed foods, watch the sugar, get moving, and get some control over your body weight. And those are the things that you have control over that you can do that can affect the outcome of your cancer journey. So I thank you for having me here tonight. One doctor has said that more Americans commit suicide with a knife and fork than any other weapon. And so I hope tonight is a start or a re-engagement or a reminder of what you can begin to do to turn the risk profile around for yourself, for your families, for your children, and for your grandchildren. So thank you for having me. And I'll